Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah, so I have done two. One as React 1 application where I have just had everything in single in app. I have intro. For hobbies, I have created another component, and for strengths and weaknesses, another component, and have called all these three components in the index.js. And the second one was React, just two components. One with app.js, where I have defined all the items, and index.js, I have defined its name wise and called it with props. So the output for the second one is this.
Okay, can you give me control?
Yeah.
So Sheetal, did you do it with create React app?
With
Create React app?
yes, with create React app only.
Okay. Yeah, that looks good to me. Good job.
Yeah. Thanks.
So yeah, let's move on to Sadhika. Sadhika, can you present your screen now?
Sure. Um, can you see my screen, Sumandra?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay. So I've used props. First, I tried with hobbies and then removed and worked on props. So this is the content I've given, and in app.js, I have written this one in color just to check if I can make this in the color or not. And yeah, here is the content. Yeah. I'll show you my result. 1 second. Yeah, this is the result I've got.
Okay, looks good. Can you go back to your code?
Sure. Yeah.
Can you give me control?
I did. So Mindra, I was trying to get an image in the JavaScript page. How will that work?
Yeah, just use the image tag, right? I think Sheetal did it.
Image?
Yeah, you just do something like this. img .c, just give the source and everything. Yeah.
Okay. Because when I tried, I was only able to, I mean, the same thing was displaying there, image dot source, that's all. I couldn't look at the image in the output. So
So was it like there was an icon which was like broken?
No, here, so I've given something like this. Um, um, this is the image I've saved. So I should get the same image in the output, right?
Where is this image saved?
Um, oh, and it's in a different folder. So is it because of that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So how should I define the path here?
Just bring it here in your root directory, and from there you can access it. I think Sheetal has already done it. You can
Hmm.
refer to Sheetal's code there.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, Adhika, or else you can just provide the exact link from the directory and copy it here in the source. Even that works. That worked for me.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it looks good to me. Let's move on. Sadhika, you can stop sharing. Swapna, you can start sharing.
Can you see my screen? Hello?
Yeah, I I
Yeah.
can see your screen.
Okay. These are the components I created, and this P tag and app both are working good, but whereas this props, I didn't get the output. This is the output I'm getting. This is
Okay.
app component, and this is P tag, and this is prop joins here. This one is props. I
Mhm.
didn't get the output for props, but everything is, I have written everything is correct, but I don't know where the mistake is. Okay.
Okay, give me
Here
the
I defined here. Okay. And yesterday you said some simple P, okay. Yesterday you said some simple P tag program that I created in the rx.js that also didn't work.
got it, Swapna?
Yeah, yes. Where is the mistake I did?
Yeah, so you did a very classic mistake, which I forgot to tell you in the last session, that a component name should always start with a capital letter. Okay. So
Mhm.
if you go here, I mean, to your code, what you did was, sorry, not this one. Where did we make the change? Right, yes. No. Yeah. Yeah. So you used P as small, okay, and then
Okay.
you exported P. So since it was small, React was not able to recognize that it's a component. That's why it was not
Okay.
rendering.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And what was the other thing that you were saying?
I got that mistake here. I didn't import that one. Import
Hmm.
P from. So I got that mistake.
Okay. Okay, that's all then. I think there is some member missing. I think Divya is missing, isn't it? Um, so Divya isn't joining today, or what happened to her? Does anyone know?
I guess she has exam today, someone know.
Okay. Okay, then continue. Let's continue. Um, so you can stop sharing your screen,
Okay.
Sapna, and yeah, can take control. Mm. Okay, so today we are going to learn something about state management. Okay, and we are going to like use events, JavaScript events, and we are going to learn something about JSX today. So if you remember from my last session, I told you that all these things that you're writing here, they are not HTML. Okay, they just look like HTML. For example, whatever we are writing in app.js, these things, okay, this just looks like HTML. This is actually not HTML. This is all JavaScript. So so that's the reason, like if I write, let's say I define a variable, let's say constant a, and I assign to it a div tag like this, that's perfectly valid. Okay, that is also possible. That's because this is not HTML. This is JSX in React. Okay. So if this is JSX, then we can do like whatever we do in normal JavaScript, we can also do it with JSX. And that's something that we are going to see. So, and that will also showcase you a little bit more of what power React holds, right? So here, if you come back to our tag dev, okay, we can see that there is each one of them has a heading and has a main content, right? So we have to actually, every time we do this, we have to write the heading and we have to write the main content, isn't it? So this is like a little bit generic. Okay, and generally, like we get data from various sources like API and stuff, right? So we cannot like write like this. Okay, so what we are going to do now is that we will define whatever data we want to show, and then just ask React to use this component and show the data that we are trying to show you. So let's define a variable first. Let the variable be called data. And so what does data contain? Data would be a list. Each of the item will be an object. This may contain one keyword tag, one next keyword heading, and next keyword main content. Okay. So let's talk about the first one, which is the span tag. So the tag is going to be span tag. The heading is going to be span tag, and the main content, I'll just pick it up from here. Right. Next, the tag is going to be, what is it? P tag. Heading is going to be, and there's some main content. Heading is going to be P tag as well. And main content is going to be this. Similarly, we use something more here. One more thing is the UL tag. Tag should be UL tag. Heading should be UL tag itself, and main content should be right. So let me just full screen this. What happened? Okay, anyways. So in here, as you can see, that we have not we are not saying React how to show this data. We are just saying that this is what the data is going to be, right? So this just defined a variable, and we assigned an array to it. Each element of the array is an object. Each object contains 3 keys: tag, heading, and main content. And this is the data that we need to show. So this is just the data part, and how we are going to show it, that is taken care by this tag ref, HTML or JSX that we have defined. So how we are going to use this? First of all, we don't need all these things. We just remove this. And now what we need to do, we need to render this tag def. Okay. And we need to provide the heading to it and the main content to it, right? And this heading and main content is something that we are going to get from this data. So it would be better if we parse this data. So in order to parse data within a JSX, you have to open a curly brace like this. Okay, now this is our data. Okay, now if you remember, I told you about the map function, right? So we just use map here. So, and the map function will take the element, like, and is going to return something. Okay, in the return section, we will return a JSX. Okay, and in the JSX, what we are going to do is tag def heading. What's the heading gonna be? So data, once you do data.map, each element will contain your individual object. So just element.heading is going to give you the heading. So we just give element.heading, and in case of main content, we just give element.main content. That's all. Okay. It seems like we are missing out something, some bracket issue. Like this one, this opens, and this one. Oh, okay. I haven't closed this one. Okay, so that's all that's required. Now let's go back to our browser and open localhost 8. So what was it, 3000? Right. Wait, something has gone wrong. I think I have, yeah. Is it running on 3000? Yeah. Yeah. Right. So as you can see here, how we segregated the data section and what we need to show you. Okay. But this is not all. Actually, if you go here to inspect element, and if you go to the console, you will see that there is a warning. It's not an error, but there's a warning. It says that each child in a list should have a unique key prop. Okay, I'll tell you about this. So what it's trying to say is that since this is what we are doing is like we are returning a list, each of them contains this tag def. So whenever you do something like this, you need to identify each of these uniquely. Okay, and for that you can use anything. What we are going to use is the index of this element. So it should be 0, 1, or 2. Okay, so we get the element, we can get the element from here. Like after element we do index. Okay, so this index will be this, and then in the key prop we just pass this index. Okay, and when we come here, we refresh this. If we go to the console, now the error is gone. So what I want to show you here is how we segregate the data section and the the view section of it. And this is a very common use case because when you will do when you will create your app in real time, at that point of time you will fetch data from some server, right? So data will come to you in a in a kind of a separate variable, and what is available to you here, what will be available to you in the app will be how it's going to look like, only that particular component. It will have div and all these things defined. Okay, and this data is something that you have to inject within the component, right? And so this is a very common use case. You will find it being used many a times. Okay, so have you guys got any question with this? Some people might be confused, like, oh, what was the map thing? I forgot. Is it something like that?
No, Samendra, I'm good.
Okay, right. So once since we are done with this, now we move to a separate thing. Now we are talking about something that we call a state. So a state is a very important, what I can say, important thing in React. So not in React, I mean it, in component. So every component can or may not necessary, but it may have its own state. Okay. So what a state does is like a state is actually, you can think of it like this, that a state is binded to its what you can say, to its component. So every time the state changes, the component will re-render itself. Okay, I stress upon the term re-render, not reload. It will re-render itself because we are using the virtual DOM. So one of the reasons why React is so fast, like for example, if I change anything here in this React code and save, immediately within a few milliseconds, like this runs and this says compiled successfully, and the changes get reflected in the browser. But that is not the case with Angular. Like if you in Angular, if you change something, then it is a lot of like process you have to, it will recompile the entire code. You will have to wait for like, at least if it's a huge code, then you may have to wait for around 1 minute or 2 minutes for it to get compiled and the contents to render. But in React, this is not the case. That's because React uses virtual DOM. What it does is like, you know what is a DOM, right? And DOM stands for Document Object Model, and React. So this is what you have created here is a document. Okay. And what React does is that it does not directly mutate the original DOM. It creates a virtual DOM out of it. Okay. It mutates that virtual DOM. And that's the reason why, I mean, it works with that virtual DOM. That's the reason why you quickly get the output here. Okay. So, and that's what a state does. If you have a state defined within a component, then what it does is like every time you change something, okay, the state immediately, the component immediately re-renders itself. Let me give you an example of how we can define a state, and then we will add this data to this state. So state is something which you get from the React package itself. All you have to do is right here, use state. Okay, and then you can define a component. Okay, so you can define something like constant. Yeah, so a state takes in two things. Okay, one is the state variable, and the second thing is a um, what it's gonna, like, which function is gonna execute if the state changes. Okay, so that will be some kind of, it can be some kind of a function. Let's say that set state change. Okay, and then it will use state, and then it is going to take some data. So this data can be our data itself. So we just do this here, remove this here, put this here, and pass the data to it. Okay. So now we are not using this data. Now we are using the state variable. So we'll pass state variable to this, and it should work just fine. Okay, there seems to be some issue. There's uncaught type error, cannot read properties of null, reading use state. So yeah, so last day I was talking about how you can, how we get null and undefined, and it kind of causes issues with it. So right now you can see that, right now the app.js, it's not app.js, tagdev.js, the props that it's receiving, it's a null prop. That's why it's erroring out essentially. Okay, so let's see what the issue is here first. Okay, it says constant data. Okay. I think it's all good. Okay, let's see what this state variable is getting. Okay, seems like there's an issue with importing use state itself. So the name report. Let's check the docs for React then. Yeah, we imported it just fine. Yeah, I think everything's good here. Is there a typo here? Okay. I think no, it's just fine. Mm, Oh, okay. Yeah, invalid hooks can only, yeah, right. So I forgot this part. So yeah, so this is something that you should always remember. Actually, the data was there. That's why I thought that I'm inside this function. But actually, anything since state, as I said, is binded to its component. Okay, until unless you don't define the component, you cannot call the hook. Right. I mean any hook. And in here we are talking about the use state hook. So what you have to do is like you have to put it within a component. I mean within a function. So in here, since we are just rendering it directly, so we don't have any function here, but we can do it within the tag def if you want. Okay, so what you can do here is um, just import use state and create a constant state variable set state variable, okay, equals to react dot state, and we pass the props to it. Okay. And then instead of this we use the state variable, right? And in index.js we remove these things, remove this, and here we use the data. That's all. That's all we have to do now. Let's go back to our code. Yeah. So this is just I just wanted to introduce you to what use state does. Okay, but you may not understand the use case of state of using the use state. So I'm going to show you an example of something called a counter. Okay, from there you will understand what what a use state does. So let's create a file. Let's name it counter.js. Okay, let's import React. And since we are going to use use state, we import it from React. Now, let's define an arrow function here. We will return some JSX. So what we are going to do in here is like we will have a, let's create a div tag first. Then we create the current count is something. And then we create two buttons here. One will be increment the count. The other one is going to be decrement the count. Right. We remove this and we render this here. Import count from counter. Sorry, this should be counter. And for a time being, we remove all these things, whatever we have learned, and we just use the counter like this. Oops. Yeah, I didn't export it. Yeah, export default counter. Yeah. So this is what's gonna do. So here you will get some kind of some value, and if you click on the increment account, then it will increase the value. If you click on decrement account, then it is going to decrease the value, right? So this is a very simple kind of a counter. Maybe in order to keep it in focus, maybe we add an h1 tag here, or simple counter. Okay. Yeah. So now let's start building this. Now the first thing that you see here is like, let's say that here whatever we have learned so far is not going to work, because if we give some data to it, okay, let's say from the index.js, if we pass a prop to this counter, okay, so that prop is going to be a constant, right? That's not going to be much of a use for us. Okay, what we want is like whenever this increment or decrement is clicked, then this count should also increase. So this is a very good use case for using a use state. That's because what we want, the expectation is to so what the expectation is, like, if you click on increment the count, then this is gonna be like, this is going to change the DOM contents. It's gonna manipulate the DOM, right? And that is what happens when we use the state. So it's a very good use case for state. What we do here is that we define the state of this component first. So we use count, and and the function that we are going to call every time there's a change in count, and we use it. Let's say that it starts with 0. Let us create it to start with 0. So obviously there are going to be two functions. One will be increment count, and the other one is going to be the other one is going to be decrement count. So we are going to call this two functions every time we do it. So the first thing that we are going to do is every time, so here the buttons, the first thing we are going to do is like associate an on-click event to it, right? So we do on-click and we pass increment count. Okay. Similarly, if you do on-click for the button, then you do a decrement. Yeah. So here there is a little bit of a difference with what we learned in HTML. If you remember, in HTML, whenever or when we were doing the form validation, we used to write on click as something like this, right? But here in React, we are using the camel case, because this is not HTML, this is JSX, right? So as I said, that JSX is sugar-coated HTML. Most of the things are going to look like HTML there, but there will be subtle differences. And this is like one of the difference. So on click should be like this. Okay. And here we pass the function that we are going to trigger every time we get a click. Okay. Now I'll talk about this on click event a little bit in details after I complete this section. So what happens when we increment the count? Let's say, okay, let's first test if we are able to properly integrate the event. Okay. I got count. Sorry, should be string. Okay, and the count is our variable that we want to show. So we can directly render it here as count. Okay. Okay, this is not the place to render this. It should be one step down here. Right. So let's save this and come back here. So at least the current count is coming. Now, if we click on increment the count, it says I got called. So our integration is fine. So every time, so our like event increment count is getting triggered every time we do an on click event. Now let's start to code the actual thing. So what happens when we click on increment count? The first thing is, so if you want to change this value of count, if you do something like count equals to count plus 1, this is not gonna work. You cannot change the state like this. Okay. You have one thing you can get a hint from here, like this is a constant. So a constant variable you can't change, right? The second thing is like, this is not a normal variable. This is the state of your function. So you cannot mutate the state of your function like this. So that is the reason this set count method is given to you. So if you want to change the state, you have to use the set count method. Okay. So just pass the set count and then use set the count to count plus 1. Okay. Something like this. Now, if you do this, we go back to the code, to click increment count, it does get incremented. Increment count, then it becomes 2, then it becomes 3 and stuff, and so on and so forth. But this is not a very good way to do it. First thing you should remember is never ever mutate the state directly. So every time what you should do is you create a copy of your state. Okay. So our copy of our state can be current count. You can assign it to count and then set the current count. I mean, you can do it here also. Current count can be set to current count plus 1. And now you can set the count to current count. Similarly, you can write the same function, same kind of code for decrement counter also. So you write constant current count is, let it be count, then current. So just copy this code here. The only thing that you need to change is this plus 1 should be minus 1. Okay. Now, if you go back, if you click on decrement the counter, okay. So if you click on increment, what happens? Yeah, the assignment to constant. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I used a constant variable here and then I tried to change it. So obviously it's not going to work. Let's change it to let here. Refresh this. Click on increment, click on decrement. Now it works. Okay. So this is what a state does for you. I hope the idea, at least for the state, is clear from this example, which is a simple counter. Right. And yeah, I was talking a little bit about this button and on-click event. Okay. As I said that there are some differences. One of the difference I told you was like how we write on-click. Yeah. So one of the difference was like how we write on-click here. So in HTML, we used to write something like this. Now we are using a camel case. This is one thing. The second difference is like in HTML, when we were writing it in HTML, we used to write something like on click equals to, and we used to do something like this and pass a function like this, isn't it? So this two parentheses indicating that it was a function, and submit is the name of the function, and this is enclosed within a string. Okay, this works in normal JavaScript, but you should never do it in React. So when you are doing it in React, so first thing that is never do is this. Okay, so you might be wondering, okay, increase count is a function and we want to call it every time we click or do we fire the on click event. So better we give it like this, right? But this is not correct because see, we do not want our So this JSX, this element, okay, this is going to get rendered. So what happens is every time it renders, it just, increase, it calls this increase count immediately. And it may happen that your component gets rendered, but your the state was still getting set. So this is not going to work, right? So you may fall into what we call is a race. It may create a race around condition. Okay, so this is a big no, first of all. If you have a function that do not take any parameter, like for example, in our case, this increment or decrement counter, then you can write like this, increment counter or decrement counter. Here, what you're doing is like you're passing a reference to your function that you want to trigger every time this on-click event gets fired. Okay, that's one thing. But what about like if you want to, if you have a function, let's say this increment count, if it takes some value, okay, let's say that if it takes something with it, okay, and you need to pass something every time this button gets clicked. Okay, then in that case, you may have to do and then pass that something to it. Just like a normal function call, but as I said, that never do this thing. So what's the workaround here? So you should never do something like this. What you should do instead is you should create an anonymous function and then pass through it, something like this. Yeah, if you want to pass a string, okay, sorry, then you can do something like this. Okay, I think, yeah, we cannot use string here actually. This should be a variable here. So whatever variable you want, you can pass it to it, and then you can, or if you want to simply pass this string here, then you don't need to give anything there. You just remove this E and that should work. And in here, you can use this variable something. Now you can console log here just to see if it's getting passed. Right, let's click on increment counter. And you see this something got passed here. That's because we were passing it every time we were clicking this button. So yeah, so this is the two things that you always need to keep in mind. First is like the way we used to call it in HTML. That's not what we are gonna do here. Like no on clicks. First of all, on click will be not like this. It should be like this. So it will be camel case. Second difference is we don't pass a string. Okay. We instead pass the actual function because this is JSX and you're writing JavaScript code. The reason why we were passing it as a string there was because we were writing it in an HTML code, right? You cannot write JavaScript in an HTML code. That's the reason we were doing it like this. But since this all is JSX and this is just JavaScript only, so we can directly pass function graph. Third difference is never do function and something like this. Always pass reference to the function. And fourth, never, if you have to like pass a variable, then you pass it by creating an anonymous function. Okay, so these are the primary four differences that I was hinting towards when I said that I'll come back to on-click event in some time. Right. Okay. Now I want to move to use effect. Okay. Then if you guys have any question, you should come right now with the use state.
Yeah, Somendra, one question.
Yeah.
So first thing, we are passing one value in set count function, correct? That is current count.
Which one? Here?
Yeah. So line number 10, we have this function set current, set count, and we are passing one value as an integer value.
Yeah.
So how React knows like we will pass only one parameter here?
So you can pass any number of parameters. Like, so the reason what's happening here is like this set count method is returned by useState. Excuse me. Yeah. So this useState method, it is the function that it returns. Its primary objective is to set this count method. I mean the count variable. Okay, so whatever you want to pass here, you can even pass an object which may have like multiple keys and multiple values, but the ultimate goal of this is to just set the count, and that's why it just accepts one parameter. Okay, because that one parameter, whatever you give to it, it will set it to the count method. Okay, let's say for example, constant, let's say array set array. We pass to new state and something like 1, 2, 3. So every time, so what this set array expects is an array. Okay, and that array it will set to set the array method to that particular value. And that's how the React knows that here, since this is a count which is an integer, here we are passing this as an integer. The initial state is an integer. So that's how React knows that we will be expecting an integer here.
Yeah. So whatever the things we have defined on LHS side, left hand side, that should we go and use state as well on right hand side, data type. Since we are using here array, so that should
Yeah.
go and use state as well as a data type of array. Then it will knows like React has to set the data for array. If you are just passing 0, it means like just a number.
Yeah. Yes, a good question. I mean, a good point here, Alok. So one thing I want to highlight here is that let's say what if I don't pass the integer to set count? What if I do something like this? Hello world. Okay, if we do this, we come back to our code, we click on increment and see this what happens. Now this is a string, hello world. So that's why this is happening, is because we are using JavaScript and not TypeScript. Okay, so JavaScript is not a strict OOP language. So you can actually, so they're like, if you use let or if you use const, var, it can take any value like string, or it can take integer, it can take floating point. And that's why this use state, whatever you pass it to the set count, it can take any value. But if you use TypeScript, where the type has to be defined, like for example, in Java, you cannot set a string to an integer, right? Because that function might, require you to send an integer. That's why the type needs to be correct. So if you use TypeScript here, and if you have defined it here as, we don't have integers here, we define it as number. If you use TypeScript like that, then it will obviously throw an error. Okay, but since we are using JavaScript, and any variable in JavaScript can take string or integer or anything like that, you can set it to anything. Okay. I shouldn't have removed that.
So, one question. Suppose if we want to change many fields, so do we need to define n number of state variables, or only through one we can change all the fields?
Yeah, good question. So it depends on the use case. Like if you have like a few fields, for example, 2 or 3, then you can use a state for like different components. But if you have like more than one, what you can do is like you can create an object out of it. Okay, something like we did in our index example here. constant data. So you can do something like this, and you can update your data or your object and the particular keys every time you change, if you want to change something. So yeah, if you can take it in this kind of data, and you can, manage a lot of different fields together through one object, or you can create multiple states also. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. So Alok, was your answer clear? I mean, did you
Yeah,
had?
I'm
Okay.
good. I'm good for my first question. I have second question too.
Yeah.
So can you please scroll down?
Yeah.
So you said like if you want to pass something in on-click event or function, so
Mhm.
if anything we have like to pass in this function, so probably we have to go with this anonymous function, correct?
Yes.
So now I can see like you have like you are passing one argument in this function, but let's say if we have like multiple arguments which needs to be passed with this function, so in that
Mhm.
case also we just need to use this anonymous function, or we have to pass some kind of value as well in this parenthesis.
No, in this parenthesis, if you this parenthesis is used if you want to get something, some data from the event itself. Okay. If you want to like pass some value to a function, then you can do it anything. You can pass, like, you can put a comma and then you can pass whatever you want. Okay. Now let me show you what happens if you use E, and inside this we just pass the E method, E, and in the increment counter view console log E. So what you are going to see is some information related to the event that has happened. Okay, since this is a button, so we are firing this on click event. So you'll see some data related to the increment. Okay, E is not defined. Once, okay. So every time like you do something here, you'll see that some data related to the event is getting here. Okay. So you can see what was the page, like the X coordinate when this button was clicked, what was the Y coordinate, and other things related to it. Okay. So this is like not required for a button click, but it may be required for, for example, an input box. Okay, if you have the on change event, if you are trying to fire an on change event, when you type something in the input box, then you need to get the event, and inside the event you have this target, and inside this target you have something called a value. So at that point of time, you may require this, parenthesis and pass the event data so that you can receive it in your function. Okay, do you want me to show you with an example, like an input box?
No. Somendra, clear this doubt actually. I just wanted to know like if we want to pass like multiple arguments, and for
Hmm.
that we need to pass something in this parenthesis or not. But yeah, this event concept, this is also clear
Hmm.
to me.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
great. Okay, anyone else, guys? Any questions? Or we can move to use state. Okay, I think we can move then. Okay, so now let's talk about another very commonly used, very frequently used hook called the use effect. Okay, right. So a use effect hook is used to manage the side effects in a container. A component. So what a side effect is, like if you are, let's say, your code flows in a certain way, and if you do something which disrupts the normal sequence of code flow, then that's what we call the side effect. So one very common use case of this is like an API call. Let's say that you're passing some data and your component needs to render itself, but the problem is that the API call is not yet completed, so the data is not available within your component itself or within your state, right? So this is an example of a side effect. This is something that we call side effect in React. Okay, so side effect, like anything that disrupts the normal flow. Let's say, for example, if this increment count, let's say if it sets the state after a certain duration of time, you actually do that. All you have to do is like you have to call this function set timeout. Okay, and you pass something and you, let's say 1000 milliseconds after. So this function is going to execute after 1000 milliseconds, which means like after 1 second. So this will wait for 1 second. Okay, so what happens is like your code comes to 6 number line, then 7 number line, then 8 number line. Then it encounters this set timeout function, but it won't wait for this. Okay. In JavaScript, you have like when it runs, it has something called an event buffer. So it pushes this set timeout function to that event buffer, and it simply moves to line number 12, line number 13, line number 14. Okay. And then after some time, whenever this data, like this timeout happens, this function gets executed, then it will kind of increment it. Okay, but what happens is like if your code itself is dependent on this set timeout function, like whatever happens within this set timeout function is going to set the state, and that is how that is how the JSX is going to render. Then in that case, obviously it's going to disrupt our flow, and we may get some issues like null or undefined variables because data is still not available. So this is one good example of what we call a side effect. Okay, so in order to handle this side effect, you have the use effect hook, which helps you doing that. So in order to explain to you what is a use effect hook, I actually can't do it from here. I may need a separate, I'll create a new one. Okay, let's create a new file and we name it digital clock.js. Okay, so the aim of this particular file is to create a clock which ticks. Okay. Okay, I think I may have one digital clock. Let me just search it out. If I don't have it, I'll create one right now. Okay. Explorer. Maybe I can open. One down is not going to be there. Maybe on the desktop. Item is there. Entry event. It's not the one. Learning workspace. The workspace. No. Okay, it seems like I don't have it. So I'll create a new one. Okay, so first I'll import React from React. Constant clock. Okay, so this example, we will have to write a little bit more code and in comparison to our previous examples, but this example is going to clear you the concept of where we use the use state and where we use the use effect hook. So what it's going to return, it's going to return div, and it will contain, it's going to simply contain HH, it will be our hours, then then SS. This is simply what it's going to return. We remove this from our index.js file, the counter, and we include this here. So include the digital clock. Let's export this from here. And we import it here. and we render it here. Okay, now we can see HHMMSS. Maybe we want to make the font size a little bit larger. So we can, instead of this, we can use H1. Yeah, now it looks good. Okay, so just a little bit of heads up. This question was asked to me in a real interview on React. Okay, and I was asked to, like, in a live coding session, I was asked to design this digital clock. So yeah, the requirement should be very clear. So this should be hours, this should be minutes, and the second should tick every time, we do it. So the first thing that we are going to do for this is we will import our use state hook, the first thing. Okay, and we will set our use state. One will be hour, set hour to use state 0 there, because the initial value is going to be 0. Then we have constant minute, set minute, state it's going to be 0, and constant second, set second, use state 0. Right, so initially all the things are set to 0. All we have to do here is give hour, give minutes, and give second. Okay. So the first thing that the interviewer is going to say to you is, like, since we said HHMMSS, so it should be like 0000000, but that's just a formatting issue. We will fix it later on. The important thing is, like, we created states and we are now rendering the states, right? So let's first start with our seconds. So what happens? So every second we need to increment this second thing, right? So as I said, we create a set timeout function inside. So set timeout takes an anonymous function, which basically contains what you want to do and a timeout value. That timeout value can be 1000 milliseconds, because we want to increment our seconds with like 1000. Every 1000 milliseconds, we want to increment the counter by 1. So we set here. So first is, like, we take this let new sec equals to sec, and we increment the, we use the set sec method and pass the new sec to it. Okay, so this should at least start incrementing our seconds thing. Okay, we come back here. Okay, this doesn't execute or what? Okay, seems like this isn't getting fired. Okay. Amount. Just console log here. See what's going on. Okay, this does get fired, I think. Okay, no. There's hello world once, but after that it doesn't. So there's something wrong with our set timeout function. So it does take it in 1000 milliseconds, right? I mean, it takes it in milliseconds, I think. See the set timeout. We have delay parameters. Go back here. Yeah, that's okay. Is it taking as a string or something? No, yeah, delay for 1 second. So we wrote it correctly only. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Mm, okay, I think it is getting fired because it's printing 2 times. Okay, let's increase this to see what happens. It get printed everyone. Mm, mm. Oh, +1. Yeah. Okay, I got it. So what was happening is like I did not increment the sec. So it was just like printing 000 every time. Although it was incrementing, we were not able to figure out like why it was not incrementing. The reason was that we forgot to do this +1 here. Okay. Anyways, okay. So let's refresh this. So now we have this second thing working. There's still a problem with the second thing. Okay, since this is a very very good interview question, because you will find a lot of bugs. One of the bug is like after 60 it should like revert back to 0, right? Because after 60 it should not go to 61. So you should write an if condition here also, like if like the last sec was, I mean this if sec is like sorry, not sec, if new sec is 60, you should do a triple equals to here, because you also need to check the type. If new sec is 60, then you should set the sec to 0. Otherwise, you set it to new sec. So in this way, we handle that scenario in which it should not go beyond 60. Okay, let's see if our code works. Let's wait for 8 seconds. 60. Yeah, I think the code is not refreshed. Okay, anyways, I can just show it to you using, okay, let's just show, I'll just, for example's sake, I'll just reduce it to like 15, so that you, or maybe 5, so that you understand like this is working. We refresh this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we move to, why is it not entering this if condition? Sec +1, new sec is 5, then sec is 0, or is it, oh, okay, else, sorry. Yeah, because after coming out of this if condition, it directly sets it, that's why. So now it should work. Just this 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. Okay, so this is how it's gonna be. So for the time being, we set it to 60. And that completes our, second section. Now let's talk a little bit about the other things like minutes and hours. So what happens, like every time we hit 60, every time we hit the 60th second, we do increment, decrement, like revert the sec to 0, but we also need to increment the minutes along with it, right? So the minutes, for every 60 seconds, the minute should be 1. So one way you can do it is like you can apply a check. Like if new sec is 60, then here you can use set minimum and set minimum, and then you can put something, set minimum as like minimum plus 1. So you set the minutes to 1, increment the minutes by 1. But directly you can see that this is not a very good way to write the code, because this is not scalable. What if like tomorrow someone says, okay, along with seconds and minutes and hours, I also want day, or before seconds, I want milliseconds. Then imagine like how much refactoring you will have to do within this, even within this like very simple code. Okay. And more importantly, this is more like a side effect, right? So in order to handle this side effect, we will use the use effect hook. Okay? So we leave it as it is for now, and we use the use effect hook. Use effect. So use effect takes an anonymous function and it takes an array. So this array is the dependency array. So which means that on what things this use effect is going to depend, like whatever variables or functions you are going to use inside this use effect, you have to pass it in the dependency array. Okay, so what we are going to do is like every time this second becomes 60, okay, we are going to increment the minute by 1. Okay, so what we have to write here is like if second equals to 60, increment. Okay, first, yeah, I mean, the first thing that we should actually check is like, will it ever hit 60? Because as soon as the new sec is 60, then we are setting the seconds to 0. So maybe we make it 61. So we just give it like 1 extra second. So every time just before it goes to the new one, it should fire this use effect. So inside this use effect, if second is 60, then set minute by 1. I mean, so we just put it outside, new minute, sorry, like new minute, so minute plus 1. Okay. And if sec is 60, then we should set the new minute. So what was the function that was getting returned? Set minute. Set minute, and we pass the new minute. Okay. And what if this is not the case? Then we don't touch the minute then. So, and what is going to be the dependency array? The dependency array is going to be contain sec. It's going to contain min. It's going to contain set min. Because these are the 3 things that we have used here: set min, and sec. And remember one thing very clearly, that in the dependency array, any variable that is going to change, if it changes, then it is going to get executed. This use effect thing is going to get executed. So since this second changes every second, okay, every second it's going to check if the second is 60 or not. Okay, so this is the power of the use effect hook. I mean, this is how you handle the side effects. So just for our clarity, instead of like creating like 61 and 60, let's give it like 5 seconds. And if it like, and let it be 6 seconds and let it be 5. So every 5 seconds, we increment the minute, just for our example's sake. Okay. So we refresh this. See, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops. 193. Okay. So this looks like this is taking some kind of a garbage value somewhere. Set min, then set min as the new min. None update kept exceeded. Okay. It seems like this. So what is happening, as I said, is like this use effect is going to fire every time your dependency array changes. Okay. So what is happening is like every second, your something is happening with this use effect, like every time it's getting, that's why you see this count increasing here. So your use effect is getting triggered every time. That's why it just keeps on increasing like that. Okay, so it seems like there's some issue with your use effect. Maybe you can remove the min. So the first thing you need to figure out is like why this is happening. So your dependency contains console log. Let's check for sec. If the sec is the one that's causing the issues. Okay. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, got it. So what is happening here is like, so you are like up every time the sec gets incremented, you are setting this min, okay, and you are updating this state from here. And that's the reason why there are like two updates to the state. One is being done by this set timeout function, and one is being done by this use effect function. And that is the reason why this is happening. So this is like one very good example that I was going to say is like never ever update a state from within a use effect. Okay, if you, because updating state is not a side effect. Okay, so what you should do is just create a function update min and pass the value of the new min here and just update it from here. Set min to min. Okay, and here you just pass this update min. And you this. Let's see if this works now. Okay, it seems like I think this can happen. Components have use effect, but in the guide doesn't have a dependent one of the changes on every render. Yeah, it seems like there's something changing on every render. Let's see. Now this is a complicated code actually. That's why it's a very famous, like in interviews, they generally ask. There's something that's updating every time or rendering it every time. So what is happening is like, this is your DOM. Okay, and every time this sec, min or hour, any of these variable changes, your DOM re-renders itself. Okay, and every time your DOM re-renders itself, this set timeout and this use effect hook gets called again. Okay, so there's something happening that's causing it to re-render itself again and again. And what I can see from the behavior from the logs is like it is working fine up till like 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, but after that it's not. So okay, let's say if new sec is 6. Okay, if new sec is 5, then we are updating the state. If new sec is 6, then we are updating the state to 0. Okay, else we center. So what happens is like, what happens if the sec is 5? Because in the logs, we can see that that's where the problem begins. So if the sec, like the second is 5, then the first thing is like this set timeout function is going to call after 5. Yeah, the after 5, this is going to implement this new sec to 6. And if the new sec is 6, then it sets the timeout to 0. Okay, and at the time of like 5, this use effect also updates the state. So there's a race around condition that's getting created between the two. That's why you are getting this infinite number of re-renders. So you should avoid such a thing. So how to avoid this? One way to avoid this is like not to update this here. Here we just do a set sec. Okay. Set sec to new sec. Okay. And we check the condition here. Like if sec is 5, then we update this, update the minutes, and we also update the second. Update second. Set second. Update the second to 0. Right. So let's see if this works in our favor. Flash this. Fine. Yeah, now it works. Right. So every time like it hits 5, the minutes gets incremented and the second gets reduced. Right. So this is how it's gonna be. This is the a better way to write it. So do you know this problem, like what understood this problem, like what was happening? Because we were trying to update the state here, and then we were once you update the state, this use effect gets called. This use effect then updates the state, then the DOM gets re-rendered, then again the set timeout gets called, and then it again updates the state, then it again re-render the DOM, then again use effect gets called, then it again updates the state, then it again re-renders the DOM. Okay, so that is the reason why it was getting an infinite number of calls. Okay, so now what's remaining is just the hour part, and some formatting is required. So we write here constant update hour set hour to hour. Okay, and when will the hour get updated? Every time our minute reaches 60. So we update, or not 60, I mean for the time when we take it as 5. So if minute is 5, then set hour, not set hour, update hour to hour plus 1. Okay, and the dependency array is going to contain the min and update hour. Min and update hour. Compile this. Oops. Let's again reload this. Let's see. We have to wait for some time to get the output. 2. We have 3 and 4. Okay, it seems like there's another re-rendering going on. Okay. So what happens this time? First, this happens. This is not a problem. Then this happens. We update the states for both the seconds and the minutes. Then in here, this happens. So actually, this is the same problem. Okay, so since this use effect is like updating the minimum and the seconds every time the second hits 5, so it's gonna update the minutes, and every time so this re-renders the DOM. Now let's say that if you have the minute as like 5, it's been getting passed, then this will also get triggered, and this will also update the state, and this is also going to update the state, and every time the DOM gets re-rendered, this also updates the state, and that is the reason why it gets infinite number of calls. So again, to fix this, we just have to refactor our code a little bit in order to make sure that we don't hit this infinite loop kind of thing. Okay, so let's say how we can refactor this. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. And we need to take the hour. So if the hour is 1, so what we do is like we update the hour here. No, but that is not a, like we can do it like that, but the coding standard won't be the correct one because the code will then be not scalable. So if you have to write scalable code, then we have to do something else. So actually after 5, this should be 6, isn't it? Because if it shouldn't be like 6. But can it be 6? Because 2 win plus 1. Yeah, it can be 6. Yeah. Okay. Where does the problem occurs? Okay. So we remove this from dependency array. Let's see. But it won't get called altogether because let's see. Right. Every time the second, updates, you update the minute. Wait a minute. The second is 5, then update in minute to new minute. What happens otherwise? Second to 0. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So we'll update the hour. So actually you can fix it very simply. And a simple fix for this is like if new minutes is 5, then increment update hour by hour plus 1. Let's see this works. Right. Mm. Okay, it still goes into some kind of infinite loop. Yeah, okay, I didn't remove this one, right? Let's remove this one. Let's try again. Yeah, so okay, it still does this. Okay, so we get the idea like why this problem is happening is because every second this set sec is called, which is updating the DOM. And then after 5 seconds, okay, we are updating both the seconds and the minutes together. So it just works fine. But after every 5 minutes, we are also updating the hours. So what's happening is like you update the second gets updated, it re-renders the DOM. Then you have this use effect which updates the this update the minute. So again the DOM re-renders, and then you have the update this hours. So this then it again re-renders this thing. So there's this race around condition that gets created because there are like 3 updates, and 3 updates are kind of because one update affects the another and the other update affects the another. So this kind of creates a chain in which the DOM keeps on getting updated, and that's the reason you get like this infinite numbers going forward, like infinite number of updates happening to the hour. Okay, so so there's this solution to this, which is to use the use memo hook, which is use memo, this one, but we don't, this is going to memoize the DOM. That way it won't get updated. But that is not a correct way, actually. And this is also not a correct way. The correct way is to like use this hour here, this use effect here. Okay. And maybe we can use an option of callback to create to update this hour so that it doesn't create a race around condition. So what we have to actually maintain is like if one state is getting updated, okay, then the other states should not get updated. Right now, every time, like the second guessing state gets updated every second. Okay, and at the same time, like hours or minutes are getting updated. That's the reason it doesn't work that way. So yeah, so okay, let me come back to you with a fix for the hour. Let us just keep it to minutes and seconds. The other thing was to the formatting thing. So let's write a function to format our code, like format, and we pass the number to it. Okay, and if the number is like less than 10, number is less than 10, then simply return, just append a 0 to it, plus number. And here you just click on format, you pass number to it, pass your seconds to it. And similarly for here, format minutes, pass the minute to it. And format hour and pass the hours to it. Okay, so let's see if our formatting is correct. Yeah, so you can see now 000003. This is the format that we expected. One thing here is like you may see that I told you at the start that never to use this like start and end on the to call a function, but here I'm using this. So you might be wondering like why am I using it here? So the reason is like in the counter.js, this was associated with an on-click event. Okay, I said not to use it with an on-click event, but in digital clock, what is like every time the DOM gets rendered, I want this to get fired. Here, this was just the opposite. Like I don't want this on-click event to get fired every time the DOM gets rendered. Only on the click, I want it to get fired. That's why we were using this way. And if you want updates to be there every time the DOM gets rendered, then you can use this one in this way. Okay. Okay, so that's all from today. I think use effect and use state, at least the use state was clear. The use effect, I know some of you might have a little bit of confusion yet, like for example, like how it's getting updated and all. So yeah, I'll try to clear this in your next session. Use effect is like a little bit, it's a thing to like understand, so it may not be clear straight away. Okay, and this is like we saw another issue here, which is like it was getting called again and again every time we were trying to get this thing sorted like this. So we will talk about this in our next session where I can actually give you a solution to this update hour at least, because right now this is creating a race around condition because the DOM keeps on getting updated. But what you can, so what I want you to do at home as part of your assignment is like you try to create a calculator. Okay, so let me give you let me open Paint. So you have this sorry, let's remove this. So you will have this thing, and inside this you will have let's say you will have a kind of a display, and here you will have like 4 buttons. This will be one will be like one is going to be like increment by 4. This is going to be decrement by 4. One is increment by 5, or maybe multiply by 10, and this will be divide by 10. So this is something that I want to do. You will have to use use state here. Without use state, this won't be possible. And by you, and just you have to like use the use state and just pass on the values, and whatever you want you can display here in the JSX. Okay, Yeah, I think the assignment is clear to everyone, guys.
Yes, Soman, yes. So you
Yeah,
just
so
want 4 buttons with some of the actions,
yes,
and the value
so
should be displayed in the top box.
yes, correct.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, and the actions can be anything you want, like plus, minus, multiply, divide, anything. Okay, and I'll come back to you tomorrow with some solution to this update our problem. Okay, just to give you an update on the how to fix the race around condition. I mean, we can fix it with use memo, but I don't want to use memo at this point of time, because this is like a more of a design problem. Okay, and using use memo might not be the best solution. So I'll see like what other solutions there can be, but I'll come back with a solution tomorrow for this. And for the time being, you just use it with use state hook. Okay. Okay, guys, then see you tomorrow. If you have any questions, you can ask right now.
Somander, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can I share my screen?
Yeah, sure. Let me stop my screen share.
Mhm. Okay. You can see my screen now, right?
Yeah, I can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay. I implemented this one, and when I click this submit button, it's not working. I don't know what happened.
Okay. Give me control.
Okay.
Okay. Let's come back here. Yes, it's because you're not calling the function itself. Okay, let's try now. Let's console log something. Mhm. Okay. It has validated first name, you're calling it there. And then you have alert, it says submitted successfully.
Is it because of C? On click C must be capital letter, right?
No, no, that is for JSX, not for HTML.
Okay.
Okay. So is your script getting loaded? Let me just check that one. Okay, the script gets loaded. Yeah, that works. Yeah, I think why it was not working was because you did not call the submit function. In here, you have to like call it in this way.
Did I miss that process?
Yes.
Okay. I think I have given. Okay. I didn't give that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the reason.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, guys? Anything related to our current session on use state and then parsing the data, like creating the data and like differentiating the JSX and the data entity?
For now, I will work on that. And meanwhile, if I get anything, I'll ask you next session.
Okay, no issues. Okay, thanks everyone. See you then tomorrow. Okay, have a good day.
Sure. Thanks,
Thank you,
Sonali.
Sujata.